I'm dancing to an imaginary song that I'm playing in my head. We're live. It is 10:57, so before noon. So could be a morning wake up call for your projects. Go get stuff done. Got my little stick here that I have to hit my light with when it turns out. Shuts off arbitrarily, and I just smack it a couple times. It comes back on. Today, I actually want to talk about timing. I have the video up. Please, if you have not gone to take a look at it, take a look at the testing that I did on the small block Chevy, where we ran the roller rocker test, which was interesting because we didn't really gain any power. We did the carb spacer from the guys at Wilson, who are fantastic. I could say nothing but good things about the guys from Wilson. We ran, before that, though, we did what we normally do, and we start off with low timing. And this is really interesting. And although this is our procedure for when we do this, to basically is for the safety of the motor. And, you know, it makes sense to slowly add timing. And I'm going to show you why it makes sense to slowly add timing, because you obviously don't want to detonate the motor. But there's a transition here that shows you how close you're getting to detonation, basically. Now, in our case, the nice thing about this, and you guys don't really, or most guys don't really have this luxury unless you're running a drag race car and you're running it fairly cold. But the problem with running it on the street, if you're running at temperature 180 to 200 degrees, plus you're grabbing underhood air, which is also bad, and we don't do that. We're getting cold air from the way that the dyno air processing works. We get good ambient air from outside, so whatever that temperature is, but it's not 150 plus degree underhood air. And we're also running the motor cold, 130 or 140 degrees. The reason that we do that mostly is as a hedge against detonation. Honestly, we know that it will make a little less power at temperature. And I have that video up where we ran it at different temperatures, so you can kind of see what the degradation is in power for temperature. But the reason that we do it is because it helps minimize the chance of detonation. And this allows us to run on our junky 91 octane premium gas. And then what we can do is we can do what we did here, and we can step up in timing till we get to the point where the motor's not making any more power. We have maxed out the amount of timing that combination, primarily the combustion chamber, but also the piston to some extent, we've maxed out what that thing wants and where it's most efficient in terms of timing. Now, we did something that I wouldn't do, and I wouldn't recommend on the street, certainly, is we run a lock distributor, mostly because that distributor that I take off of the distributor area at Westec and put in is a lock distributor, and it just makes it easier. The problem is twofold. One is that when you go to start the motor with 35 or more degrees of timing, it can be cantankerous starting. The other problem is that you actually want a curve in there, because you don't need nearly as much timing down at 3,000 RPM range or even lower as you do at 5,000 or 6,000 or 6,500 or 7,000, however high you're revving it. You'll need more timing up there, but you don't need that much down low, and that's where you'll detonate the motor. Again, the reason that we run this thing cold is so we can do that. But the interesting thing on this small block is this was a carbureted small block, just basically a stock L98 kind of motor, we think. I'm not sure about the camshaft, but the 113 heads, aluminum heads on it. We had a dual plane manifold, a Performer RPM air gap, a 650 Holley. We had the MSD distributor, and then we had the long tube headers on it, and a Mazir electric water pump, and ran it on the engine dyno. And then what we did was, when I put the distributor in, because there was no distributor in it, I just set it so we adjusted the crank. So we basically had like 20 degrees of timing in it. And then if you set the distributor in and you lined up number one right at number one, it should be really close to that. And that's what it started out at. It started out at about 20 degrees. And the interesting thing is that when we did that, it made 292 horsepower at 20 degrees of timing. Then we went up to 25 and it gained 31 horsepower. So it went up to 321 or so. And it depends on where you're exactly measuring it. But what I'm showing you is we start to get diminishing gains as we go up in timing. Down at the bottom, you go from 20 to 25, you get a pretty big gain. When you step up to 30, naturally, as you would expect, we're going to get less. And that's exactly what happened. So we went from 20 to 25, we picked up 31 horsepower. When we went from 25 to 30, we picked up 19. So you can kind of see, and had we gone down to 15 degrees and went from 15 to 20, the gain would have been even greater. But so we only picked up 19. So we were up near 340 horsepower. And then when we went from 30 to 35, we only gained 7 horsepower. We went from 340 to 347 or 348-ish. And then when we went to 37 degrees, we picked up this many. We picked up nothing. And that's what will happen. Is as we go up in timing, the thing will, the big jumps come from down low. So really you could get close. You could run this thing at 30 degrees and you'll only be missing out on 8 or 9 horsepower. So not a whole bunch. So if that's what you have to do to make the thing not detonate. Now, honestly, detonation is probably going to happen more near the torque peak down low than it is at the horsepower peak. So the total timing and at the horsepower peak usually is not the issue. It's on a carbureted deal with the distributor. It would be the way that you have the curve come in. A lot of times when, and this is fairly common, especially back in the day when guys were putting curves in their distributors, they were putting in very light springs and making the curve come on really quick. Because on a lot of factory distributors, the curve is very, very slow. You might not get full timing till 4,000 or 4,500 RPM. On a curve distributor, it might all come in by 3,000. And since we're starting our load at near 3,000, in this case it was 2,800 or something, all of the distributor, all of the ignition timing might be in. And this flies in the face of the fact that when we run like fuel injected motors, we don't have full timing at 3,000 at 3,000 RPM. We have much less timing there, and we don't lose any power. So and it would be safer and much less likely to detonate. Things that we can get away with on the engine dyno are not the things that we would get away with. Although on these carbureted distributor deals, like I said, it's not uncommon for these guys to have full advance in by 3,000 RPM. And for factory application, particularly HEIs, to almost not ever get full advance because it's still going it's still climbing as they shift because it has so much swing. And we normally have to limit the amount of advance that's available on those kinds of distributors. We have to drill and set in a screw or something just to kind of lock it or restrict the amount of centrifugal timing that it has, centrifugal advance. So we went from going for the first 5 degrees, we gained 31 horsepower. The next 5 degrees gave us 19 horsepower. The next 5 degrees gave us 7 horsepower. And then the next just 2 degrees, because we don't want to go another 5. This thing, and this shows us that when we went just 2 degrees, we got no gain. So going 5 degrees would put us beyond where we're not getting any power and when we're start getting into the problem area. And so we don't want to do that. And so this is what I was talking about with, as you take these steps up and the gains get smaller and smaller, and when they get to nothing, that's the danger zone. That's when you have to start worrying about detonation. And so that's telling you, hey, look over here, something bad is going to happen. Yes, you're still getting gains right now, but there's going to be a point where that's not happening anymore and you need to stop. This is why going up and timing slowly, good idea. Running cold water, good idea. More octane than you need, a good idea. And in this case, when we're doing the timing sweeps, we do the timing sweeps with a rich mixture. So we're also hedging our bet a little bit with having a little bit of extra fuel there to, kind of help stop problems should they arise. But this is cool. And this is not a unique situation. If you take a look at any of the videos I've done on tuning, if you look at the LS stuff or anything else, we follow the same kind of procedure. If we're in the EFI, okay, look, on an LS, let's start at 23 or 24 degrees. And then that way we can get the air fuel kind of dialed in and go, oh, look, it's all safe. It's in the 11s or 12s or wherever we want it, depending on if it's a boosted motor or an NA motor. And then we get a good, we can interpolate everything and go, okay, it's all going to do this. And then we start adding timing. And the same thing happens on an LS motor. If we go from, 23 to 25 to 27 and then the 29, from 27 to 29, there might be almost nothing. And they tend to run fairly good there. But when they're cold and when they have cold air going to them, a lot of times the guys can't do that on the street running at full temperature. And particularly if they're not grabbing like outside ambient air. So the closer you get to where it's absolute, the closer also you are to the danger zones. It's important to remember. Let's see. 50 horsepower timing. Yes. Yeah, because we went from actually a little more than that. So we went from 292 at 20 degrees to 350 essentially when the timing was optimized. And then we actually went above that with the other things that we made. We didn't get very much of a gain from air fuel. The spacer was worth a little bit at the top, and then the rockers were worth essentially next to nothing. So it was it was a good experience. Even if we do these things on the dyno, like with the small block, and we go, oh, look, timing, huge gains. Yeah, we look like a hero because we timed it, because we put the tune on it. The other things that we didn't show gains. And while we would want them to, like with the Wilson spacer, I mean, the thing's a work of art. The guys at, Keith and the guys at Wilson are awesome guys, and they make good products. And because this one showed a few horsepower on this combination, that doesn't mean that piece isn't good. It just means that on our combination, it couldn't take advantage of it. Just like if we were to put a huge set of ported heads on this, we wouldn't get very big gains because it has a small camshaft in it. You got to have a motor that wants what the thing that you're putting on there has to offer, and then you'll see some big gains. And the spacer was kind of like that. So interesting test. I like doing that stuff. And my point was that even if we're testing things and they don't show big gains, that's still really good information, because it tells the guys, hey, look, I got a mild small block of L98 or whatever, L82, and I want to put roller rockers on it. Well, do you? Do you have a camshaft in it, or you're going to be revving it? Do you have good heads? All of that stuff. So we'll see what you guys got going on this morning. Zach's getaway, Winston, perfect timing. I know you did. And air quotes and everything. Tommy, what's going on, Joshua? Would you do a react video to the $50,000 engine Donut put in their Ranger? What $50,000 engine did they put in there? Was it a cup motor or something? Funny bike. Wilson carburetor spacers work. I like the 4-hole tapered 4150 1.5 inch. Yeah. I mean, Wilson knows a thing or two about airflow, but whether they work or not is not an absolute thing. We've seen times when spacers don't add anything. And then we've seen times when spacers have a significant change in power. And it's like I said, it's less what the spacer can do, and then more the thing that you're putting it on. Scott, what's going on? Adrian, gentlemen, welcome back to the shop. Keep your whale out of the device. Have the ignition on a separate switch with locked out distributor. What we can do on the Digital 7 is put start retard in it. And that's what they do on a lot of the really high compression, kind of cantankerous big block stuff. 31 horsepower is a fair amount. Yeah, that's a pretty good gain on the first. But honestly, we're starting way low we're starting 15 degrees away from where this thing wants to run. So the first part of that is, that's a pretty good. We locked out the GM HEI advanced dirt track racing. Peak RPM is 8,800. You're running 8,800 and you're running an HEI on it? Do some cam testing on a GM L8T. I have to guess that the the L8T is probably going to respond just like the LT1 and L86 do. We have the new Suka 6.6 and some ambulances at work. They're good motors. Frosty, yeah, do have a frosty cold beverage. The Red Hot cam seems to work well for such high intake duration. I'd like to see a direct comparison with it versus bigger cams. Brian Tooley has a bunch of testing on that. That cam was actually designed. What it was designed for was an LS3, and obviously not the 5.3 that I ran it on. But it compares very favorably to much bigger camshafts. Did you do the V12 dyno yet? No, I just shipped the V12 out to Brian Tooley Racing. It left yesterday. Scott, you want to be called Day Trade? Is that your handle now? Just bought a 95 Chevy 2-barrel TBI 5.7 for a daily driver, 100 miles a day. Any suggestions for more power? It's difficult. The problem with that is not making more power. You can do the things that a lot of the TBI guys did, is you can put the bigger throttle bodies on them from the big block and the bigger injectors and stuff, and the headers, and all of that stuff will work. The problem becomes that ECU is not very fast, and you're limited in airflow by the throttle body itself. Building aluminum 598 top dragster motor today. Hopefully dyno tomorrow. Oh, that'll be cool. It's a big boy. Got a 408 Windsor. I'm switching out my AFR 185 heads for AFR 205s. We'll be ordering a custom hydraulic roller cam from Ed Curtis. The 205s will definitely support more power than the 185s will. And with a 408, I don't know what kind of cam you're putting in it, but 600 plus is not that hard to do. John, what's going on? I'll just see a whole show or two as Sam, socially awkward man, on I don't know if I've seen him. Maybe a test of a ported fast 102 versus a stock 102. That would be interesting. All of the ported manifolds that I've tested like that have not shown anything. $380 to the wheels. Is that an automatic car? Class rule street stock. Oh, points ignition or HEI only. Okay. Well, then HEI would definitely be the way to go. Have you heard of the 604 motor, the GM spec motor? That's the circle track motor. Using one for drag racing. Are the fast burn heads worth trying to push it to 1,000 horsepower with a turbo? They will do that because you're just taking whatever your NA power is and then multiplying it with boost. So if you have a cam in there and those heads and an intake manifold and stuff on there, I don't see why you can't make more than 400 horsepower NA, and then getting to 1,000 is to be better to have a set of airflow research heads on there, certainly. That way you can make more NA power. But even if you're starting at 400 or 425 or 450 or whatever, it doesn't take, it's going to be 20 pounds or less to get to 1,000. Waiting on a piston for the Brodix 632. Thanks for all your help with my blower LS. Happy to help. Are you going to revisit the M90 on your 5.3 truck? Yeah, after I get my truck fixed, after we fix what's going on with it. Other than idle, are there negatives with removing cam phasers and putting in cam lockouts? Gen 3 Coyote 3-liter blower. Do you have stock cams in it? If you have stock cams in it, then I wouldn't be removing the phasers. I would be utilizing everything that DVT has to offer. If you have bigger cams in it, and it came with phasers, then limiters, then you have to have those in there. But getting rid of the lockouts has less to do with idle, although that is going to be affected, but also average power production. Would like to see a comparison between a BTR Stage 4 V2 and an NK Performance ZTG cam on a 5.3. I'd never heard of the NK thing, and I don't know what Stage 4 you're talking about. Is it a truck cam, or is it a NA cam? Is it LS1, LS3, LS9, LS5, whatever? Small block Chevy rules, yet dirt track racing, often 300 water temps on a summer night. The radiator plugs up with dirt. Yeah, it's hard to flow stuff when you're coated with mud. Set phasers, it's done. We're changing timing. That's what the video is about. Oh, we gotta have a poll, right? Okay, does more timing always make more power? And the reason why I ask this, it sounds foolish for a lot of guys here that are sharp. The reason that I ask this is this will be our poll. But you'd be surprised at people, the number of people I get, particularly small block Chevy guys, that tend to brag about how much timing they run on stuff. Oh, yeah, this thing runs over 40 degrees of lead. Like, yeah, you realize that as that number goes up, it means that your chamber efficiency has gone way down. That's why that's happening, because you have to have spark it. You have to have the spark happen in such advance because it's a bad chamber design. It's actually better if you have less timing. But you know, guys want to brag about more timing the way that they do, having more fuel or a bigger carburetor or more duration or whatever. It's kind of funny. Is a truck Norris cam a bad idea for a 6-liter Corvette? Have headers and air intake, adding LSX fast and ported stock 243 head. The truck Norris cam on a 6-liter is a good idea if what you're trying to do is build a 6-liter that will drive around nice and make good power. There are lots of other camshafts that will make more power than that. But as you go up in power, you go down in drivability. So what you're trying to achieve, I mean, whether the cam works or not, it does work. It works on any displacement motor. But does it work for the exact thing that you are trying to achieve? You're the only one, John, that can answer that. If you want to make more power, there's certainly more powerful camshafts. The hot rod cam from BTR, the red hot cam, those will definitely make more power. And so will a lot of other cams from Comp and Texas Speed and everybody else. I have cams that will make more power than that. But is that your thing? Do you want to make more power, and then do you have a different converter in it where when you put a bigger camshaft in it, you won't have to be concerned about that loss in low speed power? So those are all questions. Not so much is this a good choice, because you are the only one that gets to decide that. B&R, that's a big difference between first and second place there. 50,000 for first and 5,000 per second. It's got to be a lot of shenanigans going on for the difference between first and second. I'd like to see you test an X pipe on your test to see what difference it makes, since you always run true duals. You always mention the BTR has less low end loss when they do so. They don't run an X pipe in their dyno testing either, so I don't know what that comment is about. But the guys from Engine Masters have run X pipes on and compared them to X pipes and H pipes and conventional, a standard dual exhaust, and there's not a big change in power from any of those configurations. Not anything significant. I remember looking through the data because I talked to Steve. I said, "You guys ran," because I wasn't there when they did that test, and I said, "You guys ran a bunch of different exhausts." He goes, "Oh yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of work." And I said, "Did you see anything?" He goes, "No, it's like tiny amounts. It obviously sounds different, and the reason to put an X pipe on, in my opinion, is because of sound quality. But you're not going to get a significant change in power. More timing means a bad head design, exactly right." Made more power on 34 than 36. And that's what happened. That's what we showed here. Had we kept going, had we gone to 39 degrees, we would have started losing power. And then you start losing power, and then you start losing parts right after that. Is the rule for turbo LS still 14 pounds of boost and 14 degrees of timing? Well, according to Matt, it is on pump gas. And 14 degrees is probably the timing at the horsepower peak, but probably not at the torque peak. I saw a guy say you can run a 604 at 45. What heads are on that 604? I don't know why there would be anything that would run 45 degrees of timing. Not anything modern. I thought you retarded timing for boost, then creeped it up with better octane and cooler charge temperatures. You do run less timing with boost. That is true. I still love endurance racing as much as drag racing. Yeah, I do too. I like I'm much more a fan of road racing than I am of drag racing. If you can remember the Honda K24 7875 turbo, did you use an oil restrictor? Also, what size injector did you use for the engine? I think we had 80 pounders on there. I think, and I don't remember about the restrictor. I don't know if the turbo had one on there or not. Ford Windsor Stroker, like the 393, did well in super late modified dirt. Autocross also was fun. I went to an RC race where first place was 10,000. There were a couple of guys roaring around RC cars at LS Fest too. A couple of guys were pretty good at drifting it. Any tips for getting a spun cam bearing off a cam that seized on it, and because of that, the cam won't come out? I think I'm gonna have to cut it out. We had to hammer ours out, and then we had to throw away the block. They added cutouts in that test. Oh, on the Engine Masters deal web. I got my 3.3 Chevy and 455 Ols limited to 34 degrees. New vacuum advance, 22 initial for the Ols with one spring on mechanical. Locked out for the 383. I went with the Norris cam because I love acceleration. I was worried about losing low end to get the higher RPM power. It's also a manual. No worries about converter, mainly street. I talked to this to a number of people out at LS Fest, and my point was that if you took 100 people that put cams in their cars, the people that put smaller cams in their cars are going to be happier than the people that put bigger cams, unless they're absolutely like racing it where they're only running in the RPM range where the bigger cam makes more power. Then, you know, as long as they didn't kill the 60 foot time where they're up in the RPM range, then that works. But most people, when they're driving around, they put a cam in. If it's a smaller cam and it added a bunch of power in the range where you're using it, because let's face it, the amount of time that you're in the sub 5,000 RPM range in an LS, let's say, and the amount of time that you're in the 7,000 RPM range, it's probably 9 to 1 in favor of the lower RPM. So if you can have more power in the area where you're having fun a lot, I think guys are just going to be happier. You can run more timing advance and more compression with alcohol. Yeah. Are you thinking on a boosted or any? Well, I guess on either one of the applications. But that's the thing, is that mentality is that we can run more, but it's not good. You don't want more. You want less. You want the motor to not need a lot of timing. But particularly on boosted applications, if you have to retard it so far, then you start having really high EGTs and stuff. So it is better to have octane and to have the proper amount of timing that the motor wants. But sometimes that's hard to do. Maybe they meant total timing for 45 all in plus vacuum. But there isn't any vacuum at wide open throttle. So the vacuum advance doesn't, unless they're just talking about the vacuum advance. Yeah, 604 is a GM crate motor for short track racing or circle track. Would saw lifters be unnecessary for my 350? You're not revving it very high, right? Do you think you picked up any power on the L78 had you run roller rockers? Probably so. But you don't really know until you test it, just like with this test. Anytime you take a hammer to an engine, something is not good. Exactly. That's the motor that I had to do the block swap on when I was doing all the cam testing on the original, all the factory LS cams. And so we had to take all the stuff out of that short block and put it in another block and then re-verify it with a stock cam and go, oh, look, it's perfect. And then continue on with the testing because the LS6 cam sees the bearing in that block. Isn't the lifter game lift versus spring pressure versus how often you want to adjust them? Each lifter has its place. I don't know. If you're talking about a difference between a hydraulic lifter and a solid lifter, the cam profile is different for those two types of cams also. Are people who swap their cams, how many should have changed their cam bearings? None of them, right? My GT45 died after 2 years of abuse, 12 PSI, 700 horsepower. What turbo is, I'm sure, better than that? Is that you're going to ask? I mean, I think you got your $163 worth, right? And David, so you know the turbo probably didn't die because it's not a good turbo. It probably died because you're spinning it near its absolute flow limit. The heavy chop at idle feeds my soul. Yeah, that's the thing. You, like I said, that's why your choice of the best cam is different than mine and other people's, because that's the thing that you want, and that's the cam you should have. I support that 100%. People should do the thing that speaks to them. But that's why your cam choice and why David Vizard's cam choice and everybody else's cam choice is different. And in the market, you have to recognize that. And if you don't recognize that and you think that one thing is going to be ideal, or you're trying to sell the idea that there is one ideal camshaft, that just means that you don't understand the market. I saw one LE yesterday and the guys were bouncing due to the due to the choppy cam. For drivability, is it better to size injectors just slightly over the fuel demand? It seems OEM sizes are that way. They provide enough fuel for what it is they're trying to get done, plus a percentage, but that's not best. In my opinion, you should have, I would always like to have way more than I need, as long as you don't have a problem with the idle quality because of an oversized injector. But there's a big range in injector sizes that you can put in there. That way, later on, if you do want to do upgrades, you don't have to change the injectors. What is a good replacement? I would just buy another GT45, but there are also other sizes that you could go with. I don't know how much power you're trying to make, but there are better turbos if you're in the 700 to 800 horsepower or above range. You definitely would step up in turbo size. Cam bearings, bore alignment, 5500 max. Yeah, you don't need solid for that. DJ280ZX, thank you very much. That's going to come in handy tomorrow night. Ryan, everybody shout out to Ryan, tech guy at Holly. We use lots of Holly stuff. Both. I'm actually waiting on, I think I'm still waiting on Holly was going to send me the 1-barrel EFI setup for the 300 Ford. We're going to use it on a Metro, which will be awesome. But yeah, lots of good Holly stuff. And I had fun at the LS Fest, which is great. I walked over to the Holly display and stuff. Lots of cool stuff over there. I asked about cam phaser lockouts because I have a phaser reading wonky at idle. I was thinking to put it in lockout and go to aftermarket cams in a couple of weeks, wait on cams. Well, if you're going to go to aftermarket cams, then you're at the very least going to need limiters. And at the very most, depending on how big the cams are, you can also lock them in place. And that works with the aftermarket cams. My point was that I probably wouldn't do that with stock cams. Now, if you have a phaser going out, you're gonna have to make a decision. It might be a good time to buy cams if you're gonna have to change the phaser anyway. Wow, Tim. Why are you gonna do a guy from Holly like that? Don't most double over cam motors not have cam bearings? A lot of them run on the on a machined, you know, cam towers in the head. I need a pile of stuff. Quite a few new ones in the tech department. Call us up. Don't know about discounts, but never hurts to ask. See, Ryan, that's you guys are gonna scare him away, man. He just comes here to hang out, and you're like, dude, what kind of deal can you get me? How do I estimate horsepower and torque of a 400 small block Chevy with stock Vortec heads and a cam with stock specs with headers and HEI distributor and RPM intake? I always tell people it's 400 horsepower and 400 foot-pounds. It would depend on the cam specs for that, but you can tell people whatever you want. I mean, they're not going to know. You don't have any dyno numbers. They haven't dynoed it, so as far as they know, that's 100% accurate. I would guess, having run lots of stock motors, that your motor will, a 400-inch motor is not going to be making the same horsepower and torque. You don't have enough camshaft in it for that. You're going to be making more torque than horsepower. And probably, like to give you an idea, this 350 that we just ran with stock heads on it and presumably a stock cam, but we also did it with the LT1. The LT1 you're going to make more than 400 foot-pounds with a 400. We made 400, and on this 350, we made 400, and we ended up making 414 foot-pounds and only 357 horsepower. The LT1, the stock LT1 with a carbureted intake manifold and a carburetor and a distributor on it, did a similar thing. It made 335 or 40 horsepower, but over 400 foot-pounds of torque. So that would be more normal on something that has lots of displacement and restrictive heads and a mild camshaft. So my guess is your torque number is probably going to see, let's see what this one. We'll say 10 divided by 350, 1.17 times 400. So yeah, you're going to be 450, 460 foot-pounds of torque probably. And my guess is probably not 400. Well, yeah, it might be 400 horsepower, but your torque number is going to be way up. I hope that helps. I need a new LiDAR gas gauge sender. Dude, but man, why don't you just welcome the Holly dude here? Just, hey, dude, what's up? You know, just talk to him. Just be one of the guys. Is there a carb manifold for 5.3 Chevy motors? Never figured. Yeah, there is. There's a lot of them. Holly, ask Ryan. Ask Ryan from Holly. They have single planes. They have dual planes. They have tunnel rams. They have any kind of carbureted manifold you would want for your LS. Skyrim works well without the hood on the car. Yep. But also timing cover that adapts an HEI distributor to the 5.3. Yeah, I don't recommend putting a distributor on the 5.3. I do recommend putting the MSD ignition controller on there. That works good. It just plugs right in. It's a lot easier than changing to a distributor. Richard, in today's video, the L98 with a stock 113 heads, what cam would increase the power to 400 horsepower? We're going to find out. We'll try like a 224, 230-ish kind of thing, I think. And that should, I think that will get us close. Richard, I just installed my VRS 4150 carb as a new to carb tuning individual. I'm very excited about it. I haven't had a chance to look over your videos yet. My guess, Mark, is it will go on there and start right up and run really well. That's okay, Ryan. You're welcome here, man. We'll call the dogs off. We'll call the discount dogs off. All right, man. Spurgy. We'll see you. Scrolling. My low ram was nice. Yeah, I have a low ram from Holly and it worked good. That's the one that we use with the blower. It works good with the adapter, with the Demuse engineering adapter for the blower. Also, I obviously got to mention, and we might be putting these on one of these small blocks, a set of Airflow Research heads. So shout out to the Airflow Research guys for supporting the channel, and also guys from Brian Tooley Racing for supporting the channel. You know, thumbs up for those guys. Obviously, we'll be getting into more, a lot more LS testing. What I want to do is coming up. I want to do, as soon as I put some sort of turbo LS combination on there, I want to run a draw through turbo. Just not that I recommend it, but just because it's kind of cool. LS1 with LS6 intake and stage 4 Texas speed cam and headers. What's a good aftermarket heads for the setup? Love the channel. Do you have, what heads do you have on it now? If it's an LS1, do you have 241 heads on there? You can do ported versions of that from Texas Speed or other guys. Lots of people have the CNC programs for the LS1 heads. Any sort of aftermarket head, Airflow Research has good stuff. Obviously, TrickFlow has good stuff. The ASCAS 220s work good on there. Or you could spend a little more and get CNC stuff like their 215s or would be good on there. There are lots of really, really good cylinder heads out there. JPL, what's up? Ryan, just want to jump on and say hi. Thanks, man. Thanks for stopping by. Say hi to everybody at Holly. Tell Bill I said what's up. You can get a dual quad manifold. Yep, you can get the dual quad, twin carb. You can get the high ram with 2 carburetors, which we've run a lot, which works really well. Can you drive the car into the garage with this Skyram? It's pretty tall. Local gal in Woodland has 6-liter dual force on it. Yeah, that's pretty common. Check out the TSP Brawler heads. Airflow Research has some Enforcer heads, and I think that there are some other ones out there. The other option for you to do is, oh, that's a 5.7. I was going to say it. That's a 6-liter, but I was going to recommend factory Recport heads, but that's going to be a no-go on that bore size. Gotta have your frosty cold beverage. Richard, how's it going? I was wondering if you could tell me what I should do to my 2005 5.3 L59. I'm trying to make 500 horsepower reliably on E85. What do I need for my motor? If you're trying to make, are you trying to make 500 flywheel horsepower or 500 wheel horsepower? And if you're trying to make 500 of either one of those, that's hard to do on a 5.3. And if you do that, it's going to be a high RPM motor, and it's not going to be something you're going to want to drive around very much. If you do it with boost, all you have to do is add injectors and a turbo, and you don't even have to change the camshaft. And on E85, that will be easy. Jumped on real quick to hit the like button. That's what I like to hear. Shout out. What is it? Wadzonda? To be. Looking forward to Chrysler 6-cylinder. Yeah, the Slant 6. Great deal on the TSP Brawlers. Todd, what's going on? Todd, I answered your email, by the way. Did fire up greatly. It's too big. 350 East Reach, dual plane, roughly 500 lift. Hydraulic roller, unknown specs. I just checked it with a dial indicator for quick. A 750 is probably not too big for that. It still should drive pretty well. A buddy of mine has a 2012 LS3. He's telling me that the new Holley Terminator X tuning makes more power than a stock computer. It could if he changed the air fuel and timing when he put that on. The computer by itself doesn't do that. It only does air fuel and timing. And so if you've changed those values, then it could make more power. If the factory ECU is limiting the amount of timing or wanting it to, for some reason, to run rich at wide open throttle, and you change that, then you can make more power. Wait for the new BTR heads. I know Brian said he would send me a set to run on the 5.3. I just don't think we have enough motor for what those heads are obviously capable of. Wish I could stay in chat. Yeah, you got to get back to work though, right? For me, I'm lucky. This is my work. gee whiz thing, but did anyone get to run the Skyram on the engine dyno? Yeah, they did. The West Tech ran it on the engine dyno. Turbo or supercharger price and reliability wise for the L59. Any of those will be reliable. My guess is the turbo will be the least expensive way to go on that, rather than trying to get a kit, which there are lots of kits available, but they're not cheap. That's right. It's got to do all that stuff. Yeah, Ryan, tell all your friends too. Stop back by anytime. Thanks for the peace of mind. I wanted to leave room for a head upgrade down the road. I don't know what you mean by thoughts. Man, you were so close. I answered yes sarcastically. I know. You got to be there to ruin it. You got to ruin the 100, right? This should have been 1 hundo. Should have been all up on the 1 hundo. 89%. No, answer my phone call. Ryan's the man. Ryan gets to come here whenever he wants. Big stretch. What to use for crank and cam signal when testing the Gen 2 LTs? Well, when I ran it this last time, we used a distributor, so we didn't have a crank and cam signal. What we're going to do is put a crank trigger on it, and I don't care about a cam signal because I don't care about running sequential. What's a safe amount of nitro shot for a 5.3? Well, what are you trying to get done? We've run 300 shots on junkyard motors, but it didn't last very long. You probably should check the ring gap if you're going to do that. What's the most important considerations building an 8,000 RPM LS? 2 things. The cam profile is probably the most important thing because it has to be stable at that RPM. But there are guys that have stable camshafts. You want to talk to somebody that actually has a Spintron and has tested that kind of stuff. Obviously, you'll have springs, but the springs, you can't just cure bad camshafts with more spring rate. In fact, that'll oftentimes make it worse. And then I would consider oiling also. What spark plugs you run for nitrous? When we're running nitrous, we almost always have colder plugs in there because we're on that same motor. We're probably going to run boost, and then we bring the plug gap down. Dat, thank you very much. I got enough to get a frosty cold beverage for tomorrow night. I'm wanting to use the solid lifters with the oil hole because it's the same price as hydraulic lifters. I wouldn't do that. Do you have a solid camshaft in it? The cam profiles are different for a solid and a hydraulic. On a 5,500 RPM, I would use a hydraulic. It's much better. You don't have to set lash. You don't have to do any of that. It just works. Thanks. I was looking at 24x signal setup so I could use a factory LSECU on the LT. That's common, and guys do that for running in the car, but that's just not what we did or what we're going to do on the engine dyno. Yes, date night for tomorrow night is Friday. It's Friday. We got no job. You ain't got nothing to do. I've got the Torquehead 24x signal kit on my LT1. I like the idea of being able to run it with EFI because we want to run the factory manifold on a bunch of stuff. Because the LT1 guys are going to want that. They're not going to want to run. They're not going to look at carbureted stuff. The book said solid or hydraulic. On what camshaft are you looking at? What turbo would you recommend for a 500 horsepower L59? Well, I would recommend a GT45 because once you make 500, you're going to turn it up. Didn't know you had time to watch movies. Why? Because I did a movie quote. Logging off. Thanks for the video. Look forward to reported fast manifold. Tony Mamo's fans swear by this porting on it. Tony's is one of the ones that we tested at West Tech. So I want to see that. I want to see a ported manifold do something. NGK TR6. Yep, those are fine. It's an old XE268 from the early 2000s. It's an XE268H because the XE268 hydraulic cam and the solid cam are different cams. I'd like to run first TPI setup. I would like to on an LT1, but mostly looking to ditch the OptiSpark. Is that gonna bolt up though? I mean, isn't the intake bolt pattern different on the LS? We ran an Excel Super Ram on an LT, but maybe it was one of the ones that were designed for that. Would a max beating GT45 be okay? Yeah, that will be fine for that power level. In fact, it will make more than that. Did you see a week ago a guy bought the Speedmaster parts? I did see the postings on all that. Yeah, we ran the Super Ram this was way back. This had to be decades ago now. Richard, how long can you keep David? Everybody say hi to David Vizard, the legend, the man, the myth, the legend. Richard, how long can you keep going like this? I just can't keep up. Any chance I mentioned I can get a mention? Yeah, everybody go watch David Vizard's channel. It's awesome. If you want to see David, obviously is the OG tech guy. So anytime you want to go get real good information, or the porting stuff is amazing. So go watch David. And I'm sure David, me mentioning it here, all of these guys, I'm sure are, at least all the guys on the live feed already watch your channel. But for the guys that are going to tune in and watch later on that are not on the live feed, definitely go check out David Vizard. Let's see, offering on my channel, PowerTech 10, porting a 2.3 liter Ford Lima head for 1,000 wheel horsepower Mustang. Oh, that's very cool. You're doing a 2.3 Lima deal? I haven't seen that. I'll have to go check that out. I'm excited about that. And you guys are going to try to make 1,000 wheel horsepower with that? Are you doing is this the new EcoBoost motor, or is it the older single cam like Pinto motor? Carburetor EFI for an old 383 Chevy. What do you prefer? It just depends on what you're trying to get done. Either one of them work really well. Honestly, I like the simplicity of a carburetor. Just stick it on there, stick the distributor on, put the distributor even close. It fires right up and it runs good. If you're trying to get like maximize fuel mileage and you want to go in and dial everything in, obviously there's more adjustability with EFI. Yeah, see, David, everyone loves your channel here, man. Super Rams are about $2,000 now if you can find them. I know I saw that they're I should have kept all of the TPI style manifolds that I had back in the day. First, we'll make an intake for a small block Vortec or LT1. You just have to tell them. Okay. Glad to see you doing some Gen 2 LT1 stuff. Lloyd Elliott here in Texas has some killer packages from. That's cool. Other people have brought his name up quite a bit. Yep, David is the GOAT. Everybody loves David. Puts out great information. Okay, I'll look at the box. I might just run a roller cam instead. It's a roller block for now. Yeah, the roller stuff is nice, and I would run a hydraulic roller in that. It's just that the roller stuff is more expensive than the flat tappet. First, TPI offers an LT1 version on their website with the correct bolt pattern. Okay. I'm renaming you King Richard. Oh, no, I'm still a court jester. I'm not that. David, I watch a lot of your videos. You are the GOAT. See what I'm telling you? Is it the cast iron head or the SVO head for the 2.3? It's the old Pinto motor. That's awesome. We have seen 733 wheel horsepower this so far. Dude, that's very cool. I want to see that. I've wanted to run one of those 2.3 like an SVO turbo or T-Bird motors on the engine dyno for a really, really long time. I just think that everybody loves them, so I just think that they're cool. But 1,000 wheel horsepower, it's pretty lofty. It's going to be a lot of boost. I'm assuming that you did the porting on the head and stuff, David, because that's very, very cool. What would happen if you take a 5/4 crank and shorter rods and put it in a 4/6 block? Will the 5/4 crank fit in there? I don't know about the crank throws and the counterweights and stuff on the 4/6 block. I don't know how all that stuff fits. Been reading your stuff for decades. Yes, I see everyone here, David. Everyone loves David. 733 from a Pinto motor. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's a SVO motor, but what Holley kit would you recommend for an 05 L59 mated to an NV 3500 turbocharge? I don't know what you mean by what kit. What turbo kit or what EFI kit? 1,000 horsepower is real power from a 2.3. Bunty, what's going on, man? Is the 2.3 David's working on different than my wife's 2018 Mustang EcoBoost? Yeah, this is apparently is not an EcoBoost motor. It's the OG 2.3 liter Pinto motor. Well, we call it a Pinto motor. It's also a SVO turbo motor or turbo T-Bird. Richard, as you know, I try to catch all the videos, but don't waste your time. It's like, what am I gonna do that teaches you anything? I do catch about 75% of them. Lima is a town in Ohio. It's like Lima or Lima. Is it Lima bean or Lima? I always call it Lima. Lima llama. Hands of wisdom. Besides Comp, who makes custom grinds? Comp can't grind below 210 at 50. On what kind of application? Turbocentra. David, I ruined a few heads trying to copy your reporting, but I finally got it. See? David, you're reaching people, obviously. As far as the pole goes, I've always heard you time for torque and jet for horsepower. Since horsepower is a function of torque and RPM, it seems to make sense. That's not accurate. As you saw when we changed the timing, you change the whole power curve everywhere. It's from top to bottom and by a lot. And actually timing, if anything, changes the power more at the top because that's where you need more timing than it does at the bottom. So separating those two, and also when you change the air fuel, you change the power. Even though we didn't change it very much, it changes it universally. So I wouldn't make a statement like that. I have a Holley Sniper on a 93 S10 and found that the Sniper doesn't run a 4060E. Huh. Holley Tech recommended a trans controller. I'd have been better to get to the Terminator X. Yeah, rather than having to put two of them together. Nightline Garage had the Super Richie unboxing. Oh, cool. Would you recommend a high volume oil pump? I don't normally put high volume oil pumps. If you're going to change it and you're not changing the bearing clearances or you're not changing the need for oil flow, like with two turbos, let's say, then I don't normally change. I just put a standard volume pump in. And if you think about it, all of our big bang motors have just run standard volume pumps. Never thought I'd have access to great folks like David, Rich, and the crew here. Yeah, and my name should be the last one on those lists. David obviously is a legend. Why you want to give me the run? Okay, how's our poll doing? Does more timing always make more power? And 88% are saying no. So we'll say that that's pretty. Custom camshaft for Windsor hydraulic roller to match specs for GM 140973995. What is that? What is that, a cam number? I don't know what that cam number is, and I don't. And why are you trying to match the cam specs of a GM? Not that the motor's not going to. It's not really going to care, but why are you trying to match the specs on that? Do you just like that particular camshaft? Richard, talking of timing, have you tried any of those distributors, which can be timing curve program deals you can do over the phone? No, I do remember seeing some stuff on that, and that obviously would be awesome, so that you can Bluetooth tune your timing. That would be cool, I think. Although I'd hate for it to do like a butt dial, a pocket dial on the phone and change my timing while I'm making passes. That would be bad. But no, that shows us like how cool modern technology can be. I think that's awesome. doing remote tunes like that on a carbureted distributor combination, that's fairly cool. David, I'll have to go check out your. Do you have videos up on the Turbo 2.3? I like the torque per output of the GM HT383. The cam specs are 196, 206, and the maximum lift is 431. That's a pretty small camshaft. A 196, 206. You should look at a stock 5-liter Ford cam and see what the specs are. I'm thinking that they're going to be close to that. David, my dad is currently running one on his 383 Nova for a few years. Been running fantastic. It fixes the issues that big cam carburetor motors have at idle. That's cool. That's the distributor, the Bluetooth distributor. What happens when you pair smaller exhaust AR with larger compressor wheels? Like a PT88, T4 96 on a 5.3. Well, that big a turbo is still going to be slow to spool on a 5.3 because it's a function of it's not just the AR, it's the whole size of the hot side of the turbo. So, and that's also a big compressor wheel. So it's a big, heavy compressor wheel. So it's hard to energize a turbo that size on a 5.3. You adjusting the AR on the hot side is going to adjust things like this much. You putting a smaller turbo on there would adjust it a lot because it's the flow rate of the turbo versus the size of the hot side. And then if you can get the thing to spool, then you have more exhaust flow, then you have more spool, and then you have more exhaust flow, and you could get it to this crossover point that I like to call, so that is kind of self-sustaining. And it's harder to do, and the bigger the turbo is. Mod motors need a torque cam. Yeah, they're not very torquey. Richard, do you have any in-depth videos on tuning carb LS engines with an MSD6 LS controller and its software? I don't, because I don't tune a lot of those. Like the wide open throttle tune thing is really easy. I can just show you what we put in there. It's not sophisticated at all. It's doing basically what a distributor does in a conventional small block. Like I said, a lot of times we run just the same timing from 3,000 out to 6,500 or 7,000. That's not ideal, but all we'll do is, and we'll put some kind of curve in there that has what I want to do when I'm doing timing is I want the least amount of timing that makes the most amount of power. So if it makes the most amount of power at 23 degrees at 2,800 RPM, we don't put that at 30 or 35, or I mean, on an LS, it'd be closer to 30, but we don't raise the timing there. If it wants to run at 23, that's what we give it. We don't give it more. And so we don't have a fixed amount. I like putting a curve in, and it's fairly easy to do with the MSD. Richard, no videos as of yet on the 2.3, but later tonight, most likely. Cool. Yeah, I want to see that happen. I'm curious to see what you've done. I'm sure it has a David Vizard, Super David ported head on it. I'm curious to see what you guys did on camshaft and intake manifold on there. Obviously, it's going to have a turbo that's capable of supporting that, so the turbo size is going to be pretty good. And then I'm sure a big intercooler. I wonder if you guys are running, what kind of fuel are you running? E85 or race fuel? And does it have ice water and stuff on it? My stock Nissan ECU might as well have been pocket dialing from 4 to 40 degrees. That's a big swing. Progressive Ignition is the name of the company. Even has a map sensor for boost, so you can pull timing at boost. That's cool. I'm new to the chat, but I've been watching for years. I have a stock 96 Vortec 5.7 with the distributor issue. Who makes a good replacement? We normally if that's like an L31, I mean, almost any distributor will go in there, but we use MSD on a lot of our stuff. But you can also use a junkyard HEI, as long as you limit the amount of advance that the HEI has. All right, David, get back to work, man. Thanks for stopping by. I got a few LS questions. Yeah, I'll help if I can. Just anytime, just reach out, man. Would a 7875.96 AR be better than a GT45 on a 6-liter? Trying to figure out what budget turbo to go with. The 7875 will certainly support more power. So if you're wanting to go beyond 700 or 750 horsepower, a 7875 is going to be better. I don't know if the response rate on that bigger turbo is going to be as good as the GT45. The GT45 is not ideal for response given its power potential, but I still think it's a little better than the 7875 is. Got my grandpa's 99 Silverado 1500 with a 4.8 liter. The engine and truck are bone stock. My goal is 500 horsepower. I'm stuck on what the first step to be. If you're trying to make 500 horsepower from a 4.8, you should be thinking boost, because it's the kind of motor that you'd have to build to get 100 horsepower per liter, or more than that in this case. It's going to be a really big cam, ported heads, high RPM, short runner kind of intake manifold. And it's not going to be fun to drive unless you have a 5,000 RPM stall converter, and that's what you want to race it with. It's a lot easier to do with boost. All you have to do is add boost to it. I mean, if you put a small camshaft in it and add boost to it and springs and injectors and pump, and your 500 horsepower is really easy. I have videos up where we've just added boost to stock motors, and you can see what happens. Small camshaft, but great output, 400 foot-pounds, between 2,500 and 4,000 with a peak of 444, 323, 31 degrees of timing. I think that there probably are camshafts that will make more torque in that RPM range that are bigger than that. A 196 cam on a 383 is not going to be optimum torque in that range. There are bigger camshafts that will do that. But if you like it and like the way that it drives, then that's a win. Maybe David will sell me his trick flow twisted wedge heads for a 4.6. Yeah, he did give a shout out to Brian for designing those heads, and Brian did a good job on those heads. Chevy Thunder, happy to help, man. My grandpa had a Ford Expedition or EXP that had a 2.3 pushrod 4-cylinder out of the Ford Tempo. Got to run high 12s on nitrous. That's nice. All right, David. Yeah, just give me a call anytime, man. I got to go. Great to see David, Richard. Yeah, David's a legend. I'm curious to when my boost will ramp in with a new turbo, a 92 103. That's good size. 1.58 AR on the stage 4 cam, 408 with a manual trans. I'm guessing you'll start to spool right at about red line. You might get it into boost by then, right? A 408 is pretty good, though. I mean, it's a 92 is a pretty good size turbo, but a 408 should have no trouble spooling that. What are the odds that valve springs are causing my power loss above 4,000 RPM and my 5-liter F-150 at 325,000 miles? I would look to see if you have a broken one, but stock springs should rev over 4,000. We run stock stuff over that all the time. I wish I watched Richard before spending my money on NA. Yeah. Got one more minute. Thanks for answering my questions. I give you a roadmap of upgrades. Yeah, that's cool. I got to go feed the puppies. I'm surprised that Bruno hasn't come in here and reminded me. It's a couple minutes past time to get him food. Yes, they have pretty accurate internal clocks, but hopefully they're sleeping. The next video I'm working on today is the LT1, so there's some cool stuff. I just was excited that we got it running, and now I gotta order the Holley crank trigger for that. Is a Chevy 4.3 liter V6 Vortec head just as good as a Brodix aluminum head? I don't think it is. I don't think it's. I think the Brodix head's probably a lot better than that. But I have not airflow tested one of the Brodix heads. I have a friend of mine, Jason from JT Fab, that does all the welding and stuff. I think he has a set of those Brodix heads, but I doubt that a Vortec head is that good. How bad is a Quadrajet on a stock 8244 truck motor? I don't know about that particular one, but Quadrajets are really good, particularly on stock applications and for drivability. I think that they're excellent carburetors. Yeah, just make sure that it's functioning the way that it's supposed to, and then you can adjust it for air fuel if you have an air fuel meter. And in this day and age, I would recommend just get something. Innovate or AEM or Fast or whoever has some kind of air fuel meter that just gives you an idea. And like we've shown with these videos, the timing thing that we showed today and up on the video that I put up, the timing makes a big difference. Air fuel doesn't make a big difference, but it's better not to run it in the 9s or the 10s The 11s is actually fine, especially on a truck where you're towing and stuff. But you're not going to get a whole bunch more power going richer than that. But you're looking for big amounts though. Like don't run it in the 9s, run it in the 12s or even high 11s is probably fine. Have you finished going through your 100 emails about the 50% off cams and other parts you're considering selling? Sent you an email about a 327 I'm building. I don't know. The 50% off cam thing was a post for the 462 valve cams, which I think I sent responses to everybody about the 462 valve cams. I let them know the ones that I actually had. A lot of the boxes were filled with just ratty old stock cams that we took out. I just threw those away. There are a couple of other ones that are available that the West Tech guys are getting rid of. And one of the sets only had one cam in it that I found. The 278 cam, which is the biggest one. I could only find one of those. I'll go back next time at West Tech and look around and see if it was not in the right position or something. But, you know, having an odd number of 2 valve cams is obviously not beneficial. But I think that there are 274 cams and 270 cams there that are available for sale. And on that note, it is time to go, but I will see you guys all tonight. And thanks, David, and everybody for showing up. And shout out to Brian Tooley and Airflow Research, Vortex, Scat, all those guys.